Welcome to Advocacy Politics Unplugged, the show that will dissect critical policy issues, explore the art of advocacy in politics, and share insights on how to make your voice heard in today's ever-changing political landscape. I'm your host, John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Business Council of Westchester. Advocacy in Politics Unplugged is sponsored by Con Edison. Our guest today is someone who is a great friend to the Business Council of Westchester, but more importantly has been a leader, not just for Westchester County, but for the state of New York. Taryn Duffy is the founder and president of Tarsam Public Affairs, and she brings nearly 30 years of experience in public policy, communications, and grassroots community engagement. With a distinguished career spanning New York's political and business sectors, she delivers a wealth of expertise to her clients. Taryn previously served as the Vice President of Public Affairs for MGM Resorts Northeast Group, where she led governmental affairs, communication, philanthropy, and community engagement across New York and Massachusetts. She also chaired the New York Gaming Association, advocating for the interests of racing and gaming venues statewide. And Taryn continues her work in racing and gaming as well as in real estate, economic development, cannabis, and small business advocacy. She spent over a decade in leadership roles in the New York State Assembly and Senate and worked on numerous political campaigns. Her experience with a national public affairs firm and more than 10 years of consulting for businesses, nonprofits, trade associations has solidified her reputation as a trusted and effective advocate. Taryn is active in both charitable and professional circles, serving on the boards of the Art Westchester, the Business Council of Westchester, the New York City Friends of Firefighters, and the Bronx Chamber of Commerce. She's been recognized by organizations and media outlets including City and State, 914 Inc. Magazine, Schneps Media, The Irish Voice, United Way, Women's Leadership Council, the Yonkers YWCA, and the Youth Community Outreach Program, among many, many others. Taryn, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
So you really have had the experience to work both in government and then work as a advocate for your clients to deal with the government. So talk to us a little bit about your background. More importantly, talk to us about the creation of Tarsam Public Affairs.
Yeah, thank you. I really kind of tripped and fell into my government work. I was working in law firms. I was a litigation paralegal, and I loved that work. But I kind of tripped and fell into politics and didn't know that I would love it, but I learned to love it. And the work is so impactful. So I initially stepped into the New York State Assembly and I worked for the Speaker's Chief Counsel and then worked for the Speaker. And then I had moved over to the Senate and became Chief of Staff to the Deputy Majority Leader. Loved all the work that I got to do there with all the stakeholders that were lobbying us, but also all of the community work that I got to do. And I think, and the communications work, and I think when you do that type of work, you really understand how every piece is part of a puzzle. And that's how I look at this work. So I really love it. I love the political campaigns that I got to work on, so many of them. Some of them I got to run as the campaign manager, which was stressful, but incredible. And then you make so many friends throughout that work that you do, and you're just, lifelong friends after you go through that. So I did really love it. And as you know, 14 years ago, I came in-house to oversee public affairs for Empire City Casino. Main goal was to secure a commercial casino license. You know better than most how long that's taken, but it was great. I got to work on getting the state constitutional amendment that actually allowed for up to 7 commercial casino licenses. I work really closely with the other gaming entities in the state. As you mentioned, I served as the chair of the New York Gaming Association for a couple years. That was fun. And then MGM acquired Empire City in January of 2019. So having the experience to transition from a family-owned entity to then work for one of the largest gaming and hospitality companies in the globe, right? Like pretty incredible who gets to do that. But since they had taken over and acquired Empire City, it's allowed me to not just work in New York, but also Massachusetts, as you mentioned, and overseeing all the public affairs, which for those who might not know, what does public affairs work include? It's the government affairs and lobbying, but also the communications and PR, your community engagement, which I think is incredibly critical, as well as the philanthropy and corporate social responsibility work. So it's really great. I love
So
the work I do.
and it shows. And again, somebody with your record, both in government and then outside working for MGM, to take that next step to create your own shop. Tell us how that happened, and tell us the name of Tarsam and how that came about.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's kind of been a long time coming. It's been a point of frustration, frankly, to me that the services that I provide are honestly really limited to organizations that can afford 20 and $30,000 a month retainers and more. And that's a very small group of very large businesses, but I know how critical these services are. And I wanted to be able to offer access to more organizations. The older I got, the more I'm like, I want to work on other issues. I want to help more people. And these services are additive. So I really do like to work with all the lobbyists that I've known throughout New York, and be able to provide additive services to the work that they're doing. But it's really more of an integrative solutions, right? To ensure that there's maximum impact because lobbying is often transactional, as you know,
Hmm.
right? You've been an elected and you lobby now. So it's very focused on direct legislative asks and compliance reporting that goes along with that. But public affairs is just it's broader. It has, uses all the tools in the toolbox, and it's more about building the infrastructure around an issue or a client so that the public policy success becomes more sustainable and inevitable, if you will, right? I like to bridge the gap between all of the stakeholders that are impacted by particular laws or policies or regulations, and not just the elected officials, but bringing together government and media and businesses and community voices. So I wanted to launch Tarsam, and I had been consulting for over a decade, not directly lobbying, but providing other services to other organizations outside of MGM. And this was an opportunity for me to just be able to provide lobbying services as well.
You're listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network. Our guest is Taryn Duffy, who is the founder and president of Tarsam Public Affairs. Let's look at your toolbox. Let's open it up and let's take out some of the key mechanisms that you use to not only help your client, but also build the relationships that you need.
Yeah, I mean, I just realized too, I didn't answer your question about the name of the company.
Oh, it's okay. We can get to
I'm
that too.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Tarsam is actually a combination of my name and my daughter's name, Taryn and Samantha. She is also a lobbyist, not with this company, but it really stands for transformative advocacy, reputation, strategy, and media. Those are the things that I do. It's what I love most. So I thought it was a fun name, means nothing to anyone but me. But I thought it was fun. The tools in the toolbox, yeah, I think. I mean, John, you and I could talk about this forever, right? Like, what are all the different things that you have to do to move public policy? And I always say that I move people to move policy, right? Because it's always about the people. It's never just about a bill. It's always about who's impacted by the bill. How do we modify the bill? How do we educate everybody so they're aware of the impact, often unintended consequences
Mhm.
of legislation, right? You and I have had so many conversations about that, where that these legislators are trying to solve for something, and their intention is to make things better. Every time they introduce a bill, their goal is for improvement. But sometimes they don't have the expertise, or they don't necessarily know how it's going to land, and it really has unintended consequences. So I think there's so many things that you can really work on. And I like, on the strategic government relations side, right, you're focused on navigating city, state, local government processes, helping clients build authentic relationships. I like to build relationships and not just have meetings. And I always tell my clients, if you are coming to an elected official with an ask, and that's the first time you're coming to them, that is not the path you want to take. If you are working in a community, you want to be part of the fabric of that community. And there is no better way to do that than to be talking to the elected officials who are representing those communities. So first and foremost, businesses need to have relationships, obviously with organizations like BCW if they're working in Westchester, to network and build their business, but also with the folks who are, elected to represent those communities. And I think that's critical. I happen to really love community engagement and connecting all the dots. There's so much there. People often look at the networking and the relationship building strictly in terms of trying to build their business and focused on bottom line, but so much more comes from those relationships, right? All the relationships I've made through BCW.
Well, I mean, and we've had a front row seat to see how you work. I mean, just taking an example of the work that you've done at MGM and Empire City, I was fortunate enough to sit in on many of the community meetings that you set up to begin a dialogue between your organization and the community if their full gaming license was obtained. And the one thing that stuck with me, and I've told this to groups throughout the state, is you didn't come in and say, this is what we're doing.
Right.
You came in and started the meeting with, tell us what your issues are and what your concerns are if this were to move forward. So having that and building that line of communication and that line of confidence and trust on both sides, that takes a lot of work.
It's so much work. I always say it's one thing to meet someone. It doesn't take a lot of effort to meet someone, but it certainly takes a lot more effort to build a relationship with somebody and then maintain that relationship. But, you're right. I think it's really important for you to open the door and have the conversation and make the introduction and just say, hey, I'm here. If anything ever comes up, this is how you can get me. If I could ever be helpful, let me know. And just to be available, frankly, and not to come to the community and say, hey, we want to do something and we want you to support us. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And you're not going to get what you need that way. There's a give and take.
We are talking with Taryn Duffy, who is the founder and president of Tarsam Public Affairs. We're talking about all of the tools that she uses in her toolbox to help her clients. Taryn, we're going to continue going through that toolbox after we hear from our sponsor, Con Edison. Con Edison customers, are you looking for an efficient way to heat and cool your home? Consider geothermal heat pumps. These innovative systems turn energy from the ground around your home into cooled or heated air for climate control, providing you significant energy savings and year-round comfort. Con Edison is dedicated to sustainability and helping customers save. That's why they offer incentives for installing geothermal heat pumps. Eligible homeowners could receive rebates that significantly lower their upfront cost. By choosing geothermal, homeowners won't just save money, they'll also reduce their carbon footprint and contribute to a cleaner environment. To learn more about geothermal heat pumps and available incentives, visit coned.com/geothermal. It's a smart choice for both homes and the planet. We're back at Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network, sponsored by Con Edison. Our guest for this episode is Taryn Duffy, who is the founder and president of Tarsam Public Affairs. We're talking about all the tools that somebody in Taryn's position will need as they begin to help their clients deal with public policy, deal with legislation on all levels of government. So Taryn, we've talked about relationship building that level so that when you do go into an elected official's office, it's not the first time. And more importantly, you have established a line of communication so that there's a level of trust on both sides as well as respect. But when you have to really go in to talk about an issue that has different views from different people, again, what are some of the tools that you use to try to achieve that?
Well, I first think in order to be able to have that conversation about what the different views are is to really know them. And if you're not doing the coalition building work and talking to all the cross-sector folks who are impacted by this, right, so that you can identify who's aligned with you, right? So that's the ideal, is to be able to build and organize a cross-sector alliance to demonstrate broad-based support and avoid these kind of single issue silos. But you're talking to businesses, nonprofits, trade associations, other electeds, local electeds, industries, community leaders. And so then you can really go in and, having done your homework, have a conversation that says, listen, this is what you're going to hear from this other sector, and this is what they're going to say to you. But we can counter that by telling you this, and this. And yes, that might be a small sector and a small implication of this, but the benefits are going to be all of these things for all of these stakeholders, and this is why it matters. So you really have to do all the research on all sides and do as much of the work for the electeds as you can, because they don't have the benefit of being able to full time delve into any one issue. So the more prepared you are, the better. And they want to see a 360-degree perspective of an issue, right? They know you're coming in and you're selling your side of it. But who else does it impact? What can you provide them? And then, frankly, I always say to people, you can go in and talk to the chairs of whatever committee your legislation is moving through. But when you leave that room, what happens? You have to take your campaign outside of those four walls. And that's where your messaging, your public messaging, and your media strategy comes in. You have to position these issues and your leaders on an issue in the media so that you're shaping the public discourse rather than just reacting to it, right? That's never the position you want to be in. Sometimes it happens, but media is a tremendous tool. It's just rarely leveraged properly. So whether that's positioning a company to weigh in on stories that are being written or to serve as a source to a journalist, you want to be shaping that media, right? Or perhaps you're creating an op-ed initiative to raise the profile of an issue that's not getting press coverage that you think should, get under the microscope a bit, or you're sharing announcements, right, with the media. So you're forming an alliance or a coalition. You're sharing a statement that you've issued. You're adding key spokespeople that are going to champion issues for you. So you really can do a lot of work using media and messaging, and that's an important component.
And you've had great success at that. I mean, the two things that jump right out at me that you just spoke about was, the education piece and then building the roadmap for how you need to navigate that as well. Can you talk about some examples that, you've been able to do firsthand?
Well, I think, frankly, everything's an education campaign in my perspective, right? Because people don't know what they don't know. I mean, when I first came in to work for Empire City, as an example, I was familiar with the property, but I did not know the economic impact that that property had, not just on Westchester County, not just on the city of Yonkers, but even beyond that. And so as I started learning all of that stuff, I was like, wow, this is important for business people to know. This is important for residents to know, for parents to know. When you have a property that's paying a near 70% tax rate, nobody's going to understand the ramifications of that better than the business community. Which business can operate on 70% tax rate, right? It's very challenging. So, and then when you find out that this is a single business that's generating $25 million a month for the state education fund, right? That's over $300 million a year. What does that do? That helps lower property taxes, right? So all of a sudden you have people like, oh, I should care about this business. Yes, the business has to be a good neighbor, right? It has to care, it has to work well. It has to be philanthropic and really contribute to the community, which I think is also, we didn't talk about philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. That is a huge part of building your brand and your reputation. So that's important too. But you have to attend every meeting you can, find every platform you can to talk to people and say, hey, I'm working with this company and they matter because of this. They're additive to this community because of this. So I think that part of the education campaign is really critical. And it does, as you know, require you to stand up and ask questions in every room, right? Which I am known to do. But it is important.
And, you raised a good point. I mean, the amount of work one has to do to build that relationship is by participating and by showing up and not just coming to an event a day before the vote, but really building, again, that level of trust and that level of line of communication.
Yeah, it takes a long time to build relationships. And I think, if you garner trust by showing up and giving more than you ask for. And that way, if you do need something and you do ask, people are willing to help you because you're coming at it from a really good place. And it's not, I don't like the transactional side. right? When you say to somebody, oh, you're a lobbyist, it's like, it's a little cringy. I'm
Right.
admittedly so. But then I say to them, well, what if I tell you I'm an advocate? Then all of a sudden you look at me differently. And that is the work that I do. I do advocacy, but I pull in every piece that I can. So I love to pull in, the branding of the organization and their philanthropy and their corporate social responsibility and their team members. Who's there? What do they care about? Everybody. Who are they selling to? Who are they serving? And I like the work that I do is additive to a traditional lobbying effort. But it's work that I really love.
Well, a word that just pops out at me is passion. You need to have a passion to be able to be an effective advocate. I mean, when I was in the legislature and I'd have a lobbyist come in and just read me a bill and say, here's the section we like or here's the section we don't like, that wasn't it. But when I had somebody who I knew lived and breathed the issue, that made a difference. That stayed with me. So I know that's what you bring to your clients as well. Look, one of the things that I'm so excited about is watching how Tarsam Public Affairs continues to grow. And we'll definitely want to have you back. But as someone who's, again, been in the trenches and now is taking a next chapter in their work as an advocate as you are, what are some of the goals that you have for Tarsam Public Affairs for the next year?
I think right now I am approaching things very organically. I want to see who comes to me that I can help. Mm-hmm. And I want to just identify people. There are some issues that are very close to my heart that I care very deeply about that I intend to work on. And so I'm excited to have the opportunity to do that. But I think I want to be able to help people where, I don't just understand how government works. I understand how media and community and business dynamics work together to create momentum and resistance. And I really want to put that to good work for businesses that are having a positive impact. And sometimes there's wrongdoing that you want to kind of undo. You see something going down a path and you're like, that's probably not the best way. I'd like to intervene there and be helpful. But every client and project is evaluated through a lens of kind of public value and shared benefit, not just politics. And that's how I approach things. And for me, clients aren't just numbers. I'm hands-on. I kind of become an extension of their team. And I'm very invested in the outcomes. So I like to take on things where I'm like, okay, I can make a difference here and I can really help you and I can guide you in a way that's going to be helpful to you.
We've talked about some of the tools in your toolbox. We might have some listeners who might say, it's time for me to get off the sidelines. It's time for me to advocate for my community or for an issue that I'm concerned about. In our last few moments, again, what are some of the 2 or 3 things that you would advise somebody, again, who wants to start on the track that you've been on?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important for people to understand and to just know that real influence is built over time. It is not bought. And that, policy change is as much about your story as it is about your strategy. I think those are important. But if somebody's facing a regulatory hurdle or they're struggling to get their story heard or they want to turn their goodwill into like a public policy win, I absolutely would love to talk to them. If they're interested in getting engaged in this line of work, I'm always happy to talk to people because I think more people need to do it. I love the work that I do. It's so rewarding to me and it's so impactful. But it is a lot of hard work. And, some people want the wins without the work, and that's not a path that's going to get you to success.
Yeah, it's leaning in and doing the work. And Taryn Duffy, who is the founder and president of Tarsam Public Affairs, has that reputation of someone who does the work. So, Taryn, thank you for everything that you do in Westchester County. Thank you for the work that you do with us at the Business Council of Westchester. And as I said, you and I will be walking the halls of Albany over the next few years on many, many issues. So thank you for joining us. This is
Thank you so much.
You bet. This is John Ravitz, the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Business Council of Westchester. You've been listening to Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, part of the BCW Podcast Network, sponsored by Con Edison.
Be sure to check out the BCW Podcast Network's expansive lineup of shows: Leadership Unleashed, What's Trending, Advocacy and Politics Unplugged, The Member Spotlight, and Nonprofit Voices of Impact. The The Business Council of Westchester is the county's largest business membership organization focusing on economic development and advocacy. With over 1,100 members, it is our mission to work for the profitability of our members and the prosperity of the Westchester community. To learn more, go to thebcw.org.